Girls on Tour is a book club that aims to keep us connected while shining a light on some badass women and gender diverse people within the entertainment industry. Touring can be incredibly boring and sometimes very isolating. Having stories to connect over can make us feel close no matter how far apart we are. For those who are listening, hopefully this feels like no different to you. For those who watch the podcast, welcome to the weirdest time of your life, because we are physically apart and decided to actually just bite the bullet and do the thing that I never wanted to do, which was record a podcast at a distance.
Bringing the tour part of Girls on Tour truly to the forefront.
If you've noticed, for a couple of months we've had some episodes go up later than we would like, and that is because I'm quite literally on tour. I have to come back to Sydney, or we have to be in the same location to film these episodes. So if that can't happen, if time restraints, if our schedules don't line up, if traveling doesn't line up, then we miss time, we miss editing time, the episode doesn't go up on time. So if we try this, then it will hopefully at least mean that the episodes go up on time.
It'll just make the moments and the videos where we do get to be in the same room far more chaotic and beautiful.
And that's the good stuff.
Speaking of the good stuff.
Welcome to the Girls on Tour book club. We're so on tour, it's crazy.
This is the most on tour we have ever been. Who are you though? Tell me.
Great question. I have for the last week and a half felt like I'm a Victorian child suffering from the plague, waiting to be taken to the sea to either perish comfortably or heal. But in a normal life setting, my name is Monique. I hated the way I said that. My name is Monique. An all-round tech. I work in live entertainment in Australia. For the last couple of years, I have been touring the country, working on big old musicals, big old budget, big old schedule, big old stress musicals. Currently, I'm touring Tina, the Tina Turner musical, and have been for the last almost 2 years. So I've been on the move. So that's me. Whomst are you?
What a wonderful question. I am BB. I am here. Look, this brain, not doing well. But other than that, I'm here. I'm vibing. I'm loving books. I'm also a marriage celebrant. If you want to get married, hit me up.
It would not be a Girls on Tour episode without both of us having an existential crisis at the simple task of introducing ourselves.
We can talk about so many things, and we have, and we will. But as soon as someone goes, tell me a little bit about yourself, I'm like,
this month, or the last month and a half, really, we kind of let it roll over, because this is a thick one. This is a juicy one. We read Immortal Dark by Tigest Girma. And let me tell you how much I loved this book. Here it is on my Kindle. Here it is in the paperback that got signed at the signing that I went to.
Oh my god.
And then here is the special edition hardcover.
What? I didn't know you had that.
Yeah, I do. Look how beautiful. Shut up.
Shit, are they kissing?
Almost. So it's safe to say that I enjoyed the book.
Just a little. Just a little.
Okay, I have so many things to say about this book. I don't think anyone with human eyes would be shocked to discover that we were vampire people. I don't think anyone would be shocked. Actually, I feel like people would be on the fence about whether you're a vampire or a werewolf person.
I'm a little offended by that.
Little do they know.
I'm a monster person. No offense to werewolves. Werewolf lore and werewolf pop culture, boring. Boring. Have you seen Ginger Snaps, the movie? It's literally a teenage girl who turns into a werewolf, but it's kind of like an allegory for getting your period for the first time, or becoming a woman. She goes around and murders people, and I'm like, you know what, girl? Papa.
Well,
but werewolf fiction is boring. No offense to werewolves. Vampires are the way to go, babe. Vampires are sexy.
Vampires are sexy and they're gay. Here's where we get into the tangent about vampires and why I love vampires. Because historically, vampires, they are intelligent, they are traveled. Werewolves are symbolic of
masculinity
urges and masculinity and in a different way to vampires, which we'll touch on this later, leaning in the realms of going in racist avenues.
And I see that.
One of the coolest things about this book is that Tigest made all of the vampires black.
Yes, she did.
Vampires in modern retellings, in the way that they've been depicted, have always been white, have always been pale. The only black vampire we've ever really had that has been part of popular culture was Laurent.
And technically, he wasn't in the book.
When I went to the signing, Tigest talked a little bit about what drove her to make a vampire story about vampires from Africa, black African vampires. And she was talking about watching Twilight and how that was actually a part of the inspiration for her making this story, is that she was one of us. She grew up in the time of Vampire Diaries, Vampire Academy, Twilight, that fandom world, which is my world. and was my world as a teen. She grew up in that, and obviously there was no one who looked like her. My tangent about vampires specifically in this lore, in the context of this book, let's talk a bit about the book. In this book, we follow Kidan, who has a sister named June. June has gone missing, and her sister believes that she has been stolen by a vampire because they belong to a group of families who in this world are the only families who vampires can feed off of. Those families attend like a boarding school when they're younger, and then they eventually attend university with the vampires that they will become like the companions of. So this university is called Yuxley. 12 of the families came together to create this university where they could teach their younger family how to coexist with the vampires, about the lore, about the history, about why they are in that setting. They have these houses that have a power. 10 of the houses touch borders, so they have to share a law. There are 2 houses of the 2 founding houses, which one of them is the one that Kidan and June are from, that do not border any other houses, so they get to set their own law. Like the house itself has power. And throughout the book, we figure out how far that power can actually go. So all of the 10 touching homes, their universal law keeps the university safe. And the law is that nobody, unless they are invited in, can see or find the university. And that protects the families, that protects the other vampires, that protects everything. Kidan ends up going into the university because she believes that the house vampire for her family, Susenios, has killed her sister. So she's there trying to figure out what he did to her, where her sister is. And he is there trying to make sure that she leaves because he wants to inherit the house, because he wants to change the house law. And that's all we get.
And I've read this book, and you explaining that the reason, like, I didn't know that the other houses were touching.
I only clocked it in my reread. All of the houses have like a specialty, and her house, the specialty is like history and artifacts. So her parents were involved in archaeological digs, finding artifacts and historically important things, typically in Ethiopia, which is where the vampires seem to be from. Tigest herself is Ethiopian, so that is why a lot of that culture has been put into the book, including the language, which is so sick, and we will come back to that. I have more rants.
This book was massive. I know that we've read like big books. Have we? Would this be the biggest? No.
I don't know if it's the biggest in size, but I feel like the world building it gave me similar feeling to reading What the River Knows, because it was like fantasy, but it was also historically accurate in a lot of ways. Like I said before, they speak Amharic. Ethiopia itself is the oldest African country, which makes it a fucking perfect place to be where vampires come
Truly.
from. You know? They were using specific time periods from history in the story as well. It gave the experience that I had when I was reading What the River Knows, where I would read a fact or like a thing and be like, I wonder if that's part of the book, or I wonder if that's real. And then I'd go and do a Google, and I'd fall down a rabbit hole and learn this whole new thing about this period of time and this period of history that I knew nothing about. And that's why diversifying your reading is important.
That's exactly it. Like anyone who's going to come on and be like, oh, I just read books, I don't care who writes them. And I'm like, that says a lot about who you are as a person.
The thing that I love about the fact that people are prioritizing diversifying the authors that they read from, part of the reason I love that is because we have had too many fucking books set in Regency era England.
Shoot me in the fucking face.
Boring. No more books set in London. I'm fucking over it. And I think we talked about this in the What the River Knows episode as well. So I was like, this is fucking boring. Why are we still doing this when there's a whole world out there that has such incredible history, such incredible lore, such incredible mythology that we're not exploring? Why are we sitting in London? Fuck it off. Exploring places that actually have really interesting and different ancient cultures is such a good writing tool. And when that is what we're doing, I want it written by somebody who actually has a connection to that culture. That's what we get out of it as just general white readers. But for the young Black girls reading this book, they actually have a vampire book that has them in it.
They would be experiencing the things that we, like, as white people, take for granted all the time, is that you can see yourself in things and that, like, oh, I know what that means because, you know, I experience it every day, blah, blah, blah. But, like, I love reading books, like, by people of color, because there are moments where I'm sitting there and I'm like, I don't know what that is. Love that for you. Like, it's not for me. And I don't have to fully understand it. And like, I can Google it and all that kind of beautiful stuff. But I'm like, I love that someone out there is reading this and having this beautiful moment where they feel like popped on a little pedestal and they feel like they can see themselves in like the, FMC or MMC or whatever. Sisenios, hot, obsessed. Like, hot, cranky, angry man that wants to murder you. Love it.
This story is a written lesson on morally grey characters. If you love a morally grey character, you're gonna fucking love this book.
Yeah.
And she spoke about this at the signing because somebody asked her this question about like, how do you put yourself in the mind frame of these morally grey characters? Like, is it difficult? How do you find like redemptive things in them, whatever? And she was kind of like, I was a Vampire Diaries girly and I loved Klaus. Like, so I don't we know that like in these settings, especially with immortal beings whose moral compass is going to be different because of the time that they've lived and the value they have on different kinds of lives, the morally grayness of it all, like it's part of the character. It's not something that is like taken on and it's like, oh no, I've written this horrible person. It's like, yeah, that's the point. Everyone in this book is morally grey. Kidan sucks.
And I love that for her.
She is a bad person.
It's spoiler time. If you haven't read the book, please go away and do that right now. If you have read the book, get ready because we're going to chat.
So to the morally grey of it all with spoilers, the fact that we first find her as a murderer who's just killed her family member who's like basically raised her like a parent.
Yeah.
Big yikes. Also the fact that and it comes from a place of like her thinking she's evil for that and therefore wanting to die and being like weirdly suicidal about her life. But she is so shit to all the people around her. Like, she views all of her friends as like a means to an end. She smashes her own head into a wall to threaten him.
Okay, honestly, that was so slay. That was so, when she did that, I read it and I was like, yeah, get fucking crazy. Like, I love this bitch so much. Like,
there's a part where she starts to like consider whether she should be giving a shit about her friends because she's like, oh, does that make me forgivable if I care about these people? And I'm like, oh, so that's still for you. Like, you're not actually caring about these people because you care about them. You're pondering caring about them to decide whether that makes you worthy of redemption.
She believes so wholeheartedly that she is a horrible person and that she deserves to be punished. And so she tries to not care about other people, but she finds herself caring anyway. And then it's like she's grappling with like that inner, I don't know, saboteur or whatever that's like, you're a bad person, you're horrible, blah, blah, blah. But she's like, well, how can I be that horrible if I care about, my sister, or I care about these people that I've barely even met? It's like she can't figure out whether she deserves to feel bad or like that she is just forcing herself to feel bad or she actually feels bad.
And I'm so interested to see how that plays out in the next book because in the end we find out that June is alive and that June chose to go away, which we fucking knew anyway because when she destroys all the artifacts like in the house trying to be a little cranky girl at him, he makes a comment like, no wonder your sister disappeared, it would be hell to be your sister, or like something like that. And she recalls the fact that June had packed bags the night she disappeared.
Yeah, and it's like, babes, why didn't we think about this harder for
She wasn't taken, she left willingly.
Yeah, such a punch in the gut for Kidan to find out that her sister willingly left her, was never going to tell her that she left, just wanted her to forget that she existed.
Especially after she murdered somebody trying to figure out where she was.
Going so far as to kill someone, hurt people, do all these things just to try and get her sister back. And then her sister's like, actually I left by my own free will and I actually have had a really great time without you and everything's been cool. How have you been? What? Like, if I was Kidan, I would have punched her in the face when I saw her and been like, that's how I've been.
She finds this like group of friends, which she finds them strategically to try and find out shit. But then she ends up having this group of friends who are all also morally grey. There's all these moments they have where they're like together and studying and they're having these moments and you start to see these like really wholesome times of them like being friends. And Sisenios makes a comment to her about it, about her like coming alive when she's with them later on in the book. And I was like, oh, my heart and my soul. But there's this like one moment, this fucked me up. So they're all like studying together. GK's making jokes and Kidan's making jokes. And they're like, whoa, you two making jokes? That's crazy. And Slen and Yusef, they have those jars for each other when they do, it's like a debilitating rant or like whatever, and his is like painful words that give me a headache or like whatever for her. And they're like busting out the jars and stuff, and they're all like just having a laugh and like making jokes about each other. And she has this moment at the end of it where she's like, for a few minutes she'd almost enjoyed herself in a world without June. Guilt knotted her from the inside out. Later, she'd punish herself later. This is how she's living for the sister who's still fucking alive and who left of her own accord.
And it's like, maybe June was a shitty sister the entire time.
Look at the difference in their relationships. She disappears and Kadan like literally murders to try and find her and is like, I'm gonna die. I give myself 8 months to die, she says at the start of the book. She's ready to kill and die to find her sister or to have vengeance for her sister. Her sister up and leaves without telling her, never gets in contact with her. And then when she finally sees her, she's like, well.
The bare minimum that June could have done was left a note and was like, hey, I'm leaving. Don't look for me. I don't want to be found. Leave me alone. Blah, blah, blah. Bare minimum.
Huge. Which she wouldn't have done.
Yeah. Exactly.
But
I doubt Kadan would have taken that for gospel and she would have done exactly what she did the whole time anyway. But at least there could have been this moment where they met back up and June could have been like, I told you not to look for me.
I'm intrigued to see what their relationship is like now because she's in the house as well because she comes back with Samson. I'm so intrigued to see what their relationship is like because, oh boy, the way I'd be fucking pissed. You know what it's giving? It's giving fucking Taryn.
Every single time you show us a shitty sister and we'll hate her forever. We can't deal with that shit.
As much as Kadan is morally grey, you know what she is? A good sister. Not a great niece. Not a great niece, but she's a great sister.
I think the lady that was looking after them was just a family friend, wasn't she?
Huge. She also abused them when they were kids.
And you know what? Sucks to suck, bitch. That's what you get.
Whoa. And I wonder how successful now that Samson is in the university. I wonder how successful the plot of the Nephrasi and the 13th, who are basically the same thing on the inside and out of the university. I wonder how successful their plot to disband the universal law of the university and have all the houses be able to make their own laws. I wonder how successful that's going to be now that Samson is there and has that influence from the inside. Because clearly June is living in fucking Delulu and thinks that they're doing the right thing and that they're the good guys.
Who's the good guys? Because the institution, I'm assuming, is not the good guy because institutions are never good guys.
I think there are two different evils here. I think there's the evil of the inside families who are greedy and want to be able to set their own laws for power, not recognizing how important the laws are in protecting the binding, because that's what the Nephrasi want. They want to break the binds so that they have all the power, can feed on whoever they want, and can make as many vampires as they want. That's what they want. I don't think that's what the 13th and the families on the inside want, obviously, because then they would just be fucking killed. Like, then they have no influence or power over the vampires at all. I think they are just thinking about the power they could have in their houses. They don't have the same goal, but the same method of getting there to a degree.
Yeah.
Those families just want as much power as possible. What are they going to use it for when their methods of getting there are killing anyone who stands in their way?
Yeah.
You know, that's suspicious. And the Nephrasi want to be able to make armies of vampires at their full strength with it being able to feed on whoever they want. So that also doesn't feel hot.
I really want to talk about the vampire law in this world and how the vampires can only feed on certain families, certain people. They can go out during the day. So I love that they've like taken normal like vampire shit and like turned it on its head. Love it.
Modern myths that we have about vampires seem to be not a thing. They can go out in the sun and like all of these things. But what does exist is that it seems like they used to have all of these powers that we classically know vampires to have, like compulsion and speed and flying and like all that kind of shit. There were these people called the sages, and I can't really remember what they did. I'm not going to lie to you. The last sage, he made an agreement with a vampire that set the 3 sages that they have, or like the 3 binds. Sorry.
The 3 binds, yeah.
And the binds are that they have to feed off one of the families. They can't feed off anybody, and they have to be a companion with the person they feed from. They are limited in their strength, so they lost all those powers. And the third one is that they can't make any new vampires without a major sacrifice, which we later learn is they have to give up their immortality to give someone else immortality. There were 3 artifacts that were used in doing that. The Nephrasi want access to Kadan's family's house because they study and search for artifacts.
Yeah.
And they believe they have one of the artifacts, but they believe that another one is in the house, or it is in the house, or they have
Yes.
possession of it. And they think that they know where the third one is, I think, from memory, potentially, but don't take me on that. Also, Samson, the guy who's like leading the Nephrasi, wants to kill Sisenios because they were friends in human life and he kind of betrayed them, Loki. He was an emperor. When his kingdom was attacked by vampires, he did everything he could. The way he describes it is he did everything he could to try and defend them. But then when he realized the vampires were stronger and the humans were going to die, he went, well, I'll become a vampire. And he forced his entire...
like court.
Court, thank you.
Yeah.
He forced his court to also become vampires.
I was looking at my highlighted parts before. I think I've literally just only highlighted Sisenios's, and I put a note next to the one that I saved. It's a shame that when I finally find my potential equal, she cannot love herself enough to remain in this world. And I've literally written a note that's like, shut up, with like sad face, sad face, sad face. That hit me like a truck. Oh my God.
I'm looking at my highlights as well. Do you want to know how everybody can tell that this is Twilight influenced? Let me read you a passage. She hadn't given much thought to the place where she'd die, but here on this cobbled ground, wrecking as much havoc as she could before facing hell itself, it certainly had a poetry to it. You know what that sounds like?
That's
I've never given much thought to how I would die, but dying in the place of someone I love seems like a pretty good way to go. I was like,
why didn't I? I didn't
really?
compute that. I didn't compute that in the moment. Oh my God.
The imagery of this university is so fucking beautiful. Let me read to you the description. Located near a town struggling to keep trees from swallowing it whole, Uxla University was an immovable stretch of old stone. Silent as a monastery during prayer, the campus towers caught the sun's first light, glowing against the muted fog. They resembled ancient candles held in the arms of a large entity who woke each day to repent for the sins of its residents.
Okay. Love.
And I just like see stuff and I'm like, it's sunny today. Like, fuck. The Sisenios quote that I thought you were talking about, other than you're dangerously becoming irresistible, which hottest thing a man's ever said, was the world loves to punish girls who dream in the dark. I plan to worship them.
Literally. I've got that and my note is, like I'm just screaming.
Oh my God. Also, once when we were talking about enemies to lovers, you made a point that has stuck with me forever since, which is that people love enemies to lovers because they love the idea of showing someone the worst parts of themselves and still being loved. She'd shown him no good part of her, no forgiving part of her, yet he bore her hatred, her onslaughts, her anger, her cruelty. Perhaps he was the only one in this world who could survive those parts of her and always stay.
Like literally, she spent the majority of the book trying to find her sister who couldn't give two fucks about her. Everyone else couldn't give two fucks about her. And this guy that she hates is like, wow, you are everything to me. This is so crazy.
You are my equal.
You are my equal, and I wish you were dead, but also I would never want to be parted from you ever again. This is crazy.
One of my favorite quotes from him, which I feel like so perfectly sums up the importance of using real ancient cultures in books like this, is when they're speaking about how she's going to convince the 13 that she's on their side so that she can dismantle it from the inside, basically. He says, you'll speak about preserving African history, your love of reclaiming stolen artifacts that represent not only a country, but its generations of natives all over the world. That is the only thing in this world that's immortal.
I love the asks that they had of each other. We don't want to do what each other wants to do, but we can have these asks. I fucking love that.
Also, the fact that she read the book that he's obsessed with, which is a romance book, let's be honest. The fact that he's a romance reader, green flag. And the fact that she read the book and like broke through to him, but because he calls her the name of the main girl in the book. And the fact that she like breaks him by calling him the main guy, and then he's like disarmed by that. I was like, the reader in me is screaming right now. When they're talking about the book is like what I offer you and my one boundary. And his is like ability endless. Boundary, you cannot make me leave the house or Uxley itself. And hers is like, you can have whatever you want. Just, she says something like dumb, like, you have to help me find my sister or like whatever. And he's like, are you sure? I could literally have you on your knees every night. And she's like, no, I'm sure. I'm like, yeah, I'm sure you are. I'm sure you are, babe.
Oh, yeah, no, that seems fine.
You know how I never have predictions?
Yeah. Oh my God, you've got one.
I have a prediction. And that is a prediction from the reread that I did. The first scene in the book is the Dean and her companion vampire discussing bringing Kidan or June back to the university because their aunt has died. And you know how everybody in the book is morally grey and sus? I think the Dean is sus. I think she knows more than what's being let on, and only based on one thing do I think this, and it's this. And I could be totally wrong, and this means absolutely nothing, but let me have my prediction for once. Because the whole book, she's like, I don't know where June is, I don't know what's going on with June, and her basis of her argument is like, you can't suspect your vampire of having blah 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 killed her or whatever because you have no proof. They studied a piece of parchment that detailed the town's layout, and particularly the drop of blood fading near the cathedral. This map was one of the Dean's most favourite treasures, handed down her family bloodline before all such tools were destroyed. She could never forgive such a loss. Before the blood disappeared into the yellowed page, it blossomed into 3 letters, spelling the word M-O-T, death. Celia Adane is dead, the Dean said, exactly an hour after they'd first sat down. And then the next highlight that I took was, for weeks, Celia's blood had run thin on the map. A rare disease that even Yuxley couldn't cure had infected her. The Dean had urged her to call her 2 nieces from wherever they hid and entrust one of the girls with the family's legacy before it was too late. But stubbornness was the plague of all the Adanes. Celia Adane had sought freedom at incredible cost, selfish even if it was not for herself. As such, 14 years ago, after the death of her sister and her brother-in-law, Celia disappeared in the middle of the night with her young twin nieces. So, she can see, using a map with blood, which is giving Marauder's map energy, the people who are the families, it seems, she has a map that seems like it has all of the families' locations on them, and she saw Celia, even after she'd left the university, saw her die because her blood drop disintegrated. If she could see that, how could she not see that June was still alive and where she was?
What the fuck? Okay.
Right? Watch this mean absolutely nothing. And I'm just like
Watch it
red
just be
string.
a random plot point and we're like, this fucking bitch. Like, oh my god.
Her blood had run thin on the map as she was dying. She disappeared in the middle of the night with her twin young nieces. But also, Aunt Celia did come back. She left with the twins and she came back. So maybe she can only see people in the university grounds.
Interesting. That still makes her suspicious. Even if she didn't know where June was, it still makes her suspicious. Suspicious better.
Let me find for you her description of Sesenios when she first meets him.
Is it, look at this sexy, sexy human being that I've never seen before, and this is crazy. Because they meet before she gets to the house with the bird.
Yeah. He looked older up close, perhaps 20. Dark skin like the rest of the people in this place, but with a healthy glow Kadan only found after staying in the sun. His twisted hair was pulled back into a band, 2 coils free at the front. The look framed his strong jaw well. But then, she says, his features were cut like dark glass. An odd urge to trace the morning sun along the ridge of his brows possessed her. A ring of burnished gold had lightened his hair and crowned him like some lost king. Plot twist, he's an emperor. The rest of his brown face remained in the shadows. He had the striking beauty of an eclipse, a form to be studied and admired even if it burned her eyes. Kadan wanted to blink, or rather couldn't. Or didn't want to blink, or rather couldn't. She watched him with the horrible, fevered sensation of wanting something that wasn't yours. Even when the time turned the act uncomfortable and begged her to avoid her attention, she kept watching him.
She's only human, babe.
It's giving he wielded his jawline like a weapon.
Honestly. Back to that quote before where he's like, the world loves to punish girls who dream of the dark. I plan to worship them.
Goth
Not
girls
only is that
everywhere
beautiful.
screamed.
Yeah, the thing that he does where people, like women can write him notes.
Oh my god, he's a girl's girl.
Oh, they feel protected by him, and like he says something like, even if they can't see me or they never meet me, they know that I'm there. As soon as he popped up, I was like, hello. I love that they're both such morally grey characters. And like having 2 of your lead characters be like kind of matching each other in that way. Like usually we'll have like the morally grey character and the sunshine character, but having them both be so shit. They don't care about, you know, certain societal things.
I think one of the biggest lies that we've been told through media as children is that opposites attract. You might have opposites, or you might appear to be opposites with the person that you love to the world, but you connect and you fall in love over the ways that you're similar.
Yeah.
Every great couple you've ever met are basically the same person.
Yeah.
They share the same core values or like belief system, or like the important parts of them are the same, and there are like other things that are a little bit different. And I think that this pairing is an incredible example of that. It makes sense. In most settings, we see, like, if we're talking vampires, let's look at, like, Elena and Damon. Why
Yeah.
the fuck would Elena actually be into Damon if not mental illness? And I'm not saying that Kadan is a great representation of a mentally well person.
Who is? You know what I'm saying?
It makes more sense that she feels safe and comfortable with Sesenios because their darkness matches and calls to each other and they understand each other in that way, than for her to be like, I could never do anything wrong, but like, I'm sure he had a reason to kill all these people. Like, it doesn't make fucking sense.
You need someone to match your energy. But I also think that that's such a beautiful thing with their pairing, is that she is trying so hard to not be herself. Like, she's trying so hard to not be a bad person, or she is saying how horrible it is that she's a murderer and all of it, which I guess it is, whatever. She's trying all of these things, but he's literally looking at her going, I love all of these things. You were so valid for doing the things that you did. I would have done worse. Like, pop off, queen. Like, he's literally there, like, saying, you're fine. Like, this, you just need to accept yourself. Just accept yourself and we'll be fine.
Also, the fact that where they bite humans, they see each other's memories and desires and things based on where they bite. Shut up. That's so sick, and that's so hot.
And I love that they can share memories. It's not just that the vampire gets the memories and the humans just like they actually get to take something from the vampire, which I think is really great as well. And also, I'm sorry, but like, vampires and biting, like sucking blood, that's hot. Anyone who says that it isn't is such a liar.
I fell down a whole rabbit hole recently about the symbolism of vampires and like sexuality and queerness, and it was a good time. If you ever want to fall down a good rabbit hole, go down that one, because oh boy.
Because once you get to a certain level of immortality or like age, rigid structures of like relationships and gender and all of that would just fall away.
As a mythological creature, vampires have always represented queerness in a way, or like sexual perversion, whatever that was at the time, which for a lot of time has been queerness. The biting, and they're all sexy, and like all of those things, it's meant to be like the devil in the sexiness.
Yeah. Oh, and I guess the fact that like vampires can't interact with religious iconography, that would be another situation as well. Excuse me, who is that? Who is this that I see? Who is it? Tell me who this child is.
This is Taco Bean.
Taco Bean.
Say hello to the podcast.
Hello.
Hi,
Hey, baby. Hi, baby. Seeing you with a little orange cat is just perfection. Like, you were always meant to be near a little orange cat.
When Aniko bites her, she sees Aniko like on ships killing bitches, but just so fucking cool that she sees all of that.
Also, as someone who loves bathhouses, like, I'm obsessed. We both love a little hot water moment. I love that is like throughout the whole book. And I also, that moment where Susenyos and Karan, they're in the bath together and he undoes her braids. That was the most beautiful thing that I've ever, that he's just like so delicately like unwinding her braid, that she would allow him to do something so personal.
The bathhouse of it all made me kind of chuckle a little bit, because I love that like this building that the humans aren't allowed to enter.
They're just in
like
a bathhouse.
Yeah. And if there's two things I was put on this earth to do, it's understand your delusion and be soup.
That's the most beautiful thing you've ever said to me. Reading this book in the time in my life and the brain space that I've been in recently was so crazy, because having like a lead character that was also deeply depressed while I was also deeply depressed was really crazy, because she'd say stuff and I'd be like, pop off, queen. Me as well.
But my first read, I was just like, is she wet? Like the head in the wall, like when she fucking smashes her head in the wall. And then he's like, yep, that's the one.
Yeah.
Reading this in spooky season put me so hard back in my vampire era. It's unreal. I have been tempted to watch True Blood again. I started watching the Interview with the Vampire show.
Oh, I really want to see
really
that.
good.
I really want to see that.
It's really good.
Do you know what's really funny? I saw a TikTok the other day, which is really poignant for this conversation. When the world is having really environmental, like, apocalyptic vibes, we get zombie fiction. So apparently, like, that's a whole thing. And when we get vampire fiction, it's when world economics are really bad. How interesting. This person, they explained it so well, but I've got a little pea brain and I forgot what they said. Apparently there's like moments in history where vampires become popular again. The economics of the world is like the same each time. My last little quote, haven't you heard? Death doesn't seem to want me. His attention drifted to her wrist, then settled on her chest as if you could hear its slow, hesitant pounding. Even death can't resist if you keep flirting with it so much. Brother, please. Like, that is the most beautiful thing I've ever heard.
Also, speaking of the houses, the weird powers in the house where like the house itself will like fucking torment you.
Yes! Honestly, love it. That he fucked with the house so much that makes him mortal again.
And this is what I meant about like we figure out how much power the houses actually have, which is why those families like so desperately want their houses to be able to set their own law. It stripped his immortality and made him human.
It's crazy that it's only in the house as well, that it's like it has such power in its
In that
tiny
one
little
room.
space. Yes.
One room.
Every time he was a human, he was so upset about it, but I was like, why don't we just see what humans do together?
I just really feel like you guys should kiss.
I don't know. If you want, that's crazy. That's crazy.
The worst you could do is try. I want to re-yap a point that I made earlier.
This is what you would call a yap around. Instead of
We're
a
doing a
wrap
yap
around,
around.
we're doing a yap around.
We're doing a yap around. That is fucking incredible, first of all. Earlier, when we were speaking about the importance of the vampires in this book being black and the culture that is used by the vampires in their ancientness, being African, being Ethiopian, there are so many layers to why that is going to hit for different kinds of people. And I think it would be a disservice to Tigist and to her storytelling. And the fact that this is a debut novel, fuck out of my face.
Insane.
I think it would be a disservice because in this current cultural climate, everybody is trying to brush off things as being woke or being like, oh, why do the vampires have to be black, blah, blah, blah. First of all, there is a layer of us reading this book. It gives us, like us as two white people, this book gives us the perfect lens and the perfect opportunity to learn more about a culture that is not our own through such an enjoyable process. I think when you're white and you're trying to decolonize the things that you ingest and you are trying to do the work, it's so easy to spend all of your time ingesting black trauma, awful things that have happened, racism, all of these awful, awful things. And I think it's also incredibly important to become excited about and learn about black excellence, positive, enjoyable things in black cultures and in black histories. And reading about cultures being utilized in books in this way gives you the opportunity to do that in such a positive, fun way, which is important. But then there's also the other side of things, which is that young black girls reading this book, especially like young Ethiopian girls, finally for the first time, like the little goth Ethiopian girlies who love vampires are finally getting vampires who look like them. And we will never truly understand the weight of that representation of seeing your own culture put in a book, of seeing things that other people aren't going to understand in a book. We will never understand the weight of that, but it doesn't mean that we can't appreciate that and love it for them. I'm here like, I don't know Amharic, but they're reading that going, oh my God, I know this language. And that has to be the most incredible experience for a reader. And I love that.
But also the Amharic thing is that Kadan doesn't know it. And that would be such a personal experience to be from somewhere and like living somewhere else or being taken out of your own culture and not being able to connect to it in that way. So I think that that would be a really beautiful thing for those girls to experience as well, is that they're like, oh, it's not just me that doesn't know my language. We have been taken away from our language and our culture. It's also about what you were saying about black excellence. It's also about seeing black joy, that they can have these like beautiful fantasy books written about them and it doesn't just have to be such like sad or horrific moments every time. And I mean, this book, there are some really horrific moments in it, but it's like there's a power to it. I love that Tigist read Twilight and was such a Twilight fan and was like, I can do this so much better. And she did. First time out, she went, I think I can do this way better. And she fucking killed it.
Good and bad books have come out of a Twilight influence. When we look at the bad lens, we see 50 Shades of Grey, which was a Twilight fan fiction.
Which
but
is
when we see good things,
insane.
We see Immortal Dark by Tigist Girma. The thing that I'm saddest about is that this book only just came out, so we're waiting like at least a year for the next one.
We fucked that up. We were like, oh, we're going to read it the first month that it comes out. Amazing.
And it was, but also now I'm sad.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to look directly into the camera for this moment because I don't think I've done it this whole time because I need to stare at your face so I knew what your facial expressions would do. But I'm going to stare at you, the viewers and maybe listeners at home. I'm staring at you even though you're listening. Please talk to us about this book. Please. I need to hear thoughts. I need to hear vibes. I need to know what everyone thought.
We haven't broken into song this episode. What song would you like to break into?
The first song that popped into my head was, we're soaring, not a star in heaven we can reach. bacon free. That's literally what we
If you haven't already shared them, we need to hear your thoughts on this month's book. In order to have spoiler-free chats about the books that we're reading, we are using the book club app Fable. It's free, it's quick and easy to make an account and keep up to date with the Girls on Tour book club. There are 2 separate book clubs, one for the non-fiction book and one for the fiction books. Make sure you head over to our Instagram, TikTok and YouTube page at the start of every month to see what book is coming next. Thank you for listening and thank you for watching if you're watching this on YouTube.